So here I stand about 10 years, almost 10 years to the day after we lost Garrett, and I was there by his side and giving him CPR on the mountainside. And to say that he's had an effect on my life is an understatement, and I can go on about that forever. But a couple memories and things that I think about often. I think of the times of being on a climb and Garrett belaying me and yelling at me, "Climb to failure! Climb to failure!" Pushing me, saying, don't give up. I climb till I fall, and then once I fall, I figure it out and I get back on and I do it again. And he would just yell that at you. Same thing when you're backcountry skiing or whatever, and you'd want to stop and rest or whatever. He would motivate you. He would, not always in the nicest way, but he would get after you, and he would be like, "Let's go, keep moving. Come on, we're going to the top," right? And so at the time, I remember thinking kind of, "Garrett, you're kind of a jerk, but, I like the way you're motivating and pushing me." And now, 10 years later in my life, right, it's instilled in me this very big drive that, you don't give up. You don't quit just because it's getting hard. You're there for a reason. You push and you get the most out of an experience. You get the most out of a challenge, whatever it is, and you learn from it. There's no fear in failing. There's no fear in not doing the right thing or doing it wrong or something like that, because no matter what happens, you're going to learn a lesson from it and you're going to be better for it moving forward. And so as a young kid and in my 20s and when I first met Garrett and started adventuring with him and doing things, and even in a work scenario as we worked together at Petzl, that was something that I was always just amazed by, and he would push me and do it. He did it all the time. I witnessed it as he got into kayaking with us, and he would jump into rivers that were way over his head, and he would flip and swim and whatever, but he came out of it with a good attitude, a little banged up, maybe a little beat up, but he, a lesson learned, get right back in his boat and go. And I think that's an invaluable attribute to have, especially now as a dad with my kids, and I'm teaching them, right? Get back on the horse, or, when you fall down, you scrape your knee, you get back up and you keep moving, and you learn from that experience and you keep moving forward. And so I'd say that's probably one of the biggest lessons that Garrett taught me. I could go on for countless stories about, adventures in the mountains or experiences that we had together, but that sticks with me and will forever in my life. Just that grit and determination and the attitude of everything's an opportunity to learn and everything's an opportunity to get better, and you keep doing it. So I'm grateful to Garrett for that.
I knew Garrett from working at Petzl, and that guy was always super stoked on just about anything. He had a really energetic and infectious attitude, and you always felt happier talking to him or just by being around him. I remember he was into photography, and there was a trip I went on one summer up to the Tetons where I took a really cool sequence of pictures of the Grand that showed all of the peaks during several different times of the day. I thought it was really cool, and I remember wanting to just show him what I'd done, and he seemed genuinely interested in taking a look at those pictures and just giving some feedback. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like, he didn't have to be that supportive or act that supportive of my amateur level work, but he was, and it just gave me that much more confidence to think, what I was doing, it was worthwhile, and he seemed appreciative of it. And I just want to say I was really glad to have known Garrett, and he was a really good guy.
When I think of Garrett, I think of three words: self-taught, disciplined, and a leader. One of my favorite memories of Garrett was when I was a newlywed. I had began having really terrible migraines, and it was all a very new thing for me. And it was a little bit scary and uncertain time, and Garrett was working up in Clearfield, I believe, and he would take the front runner up there and then ride back from downtown Salt Lake on his bike all the way home. And this one particular day, he came up to the married student housing where we were living up at the University of Utah, and he he just sat with me in my dark bedroom while the lights were off, and we were trying and zap these things, and he just sat there and he held my hand and we just talked, and he was very calming, and I very much appreciate the compassion in that moment. And I think he was a wonderful big brother as far as always looking out for me. As I have kind of been trying to think of different things to say on here, I have thought of the different quotes that he would always say. It seemed like it was, no matter if I was happy or if I was grouchy or sad, it didn't matter. And he would walk in and he'd be like, "You're being too emotional." And he'd roll his eyes and walk away. And it makes me laugh still to this day. Like, it seriously didn't matter if we were like squealing high school girls, we were being too emotional. Like, you're too much. Another thing that he would always say was, "Sleep is for the grave." So Garrett would wake up often before the sun and go out and do adventures, or wake up to take great photos during the sunrise. And I think of that as like, he really didn't sleep a whole lot during his lifetime. And it's just interesting. He always took advantage of the time that he could. Another quote that he would always say is, "Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance." And that has helped me many times in my life as I have been preparing for lessons or interviews or a day out with my kids, or it didn't really matter. It was applicable. I appreciate Garrett's example in the fact that he had friends from all walks of life. There were people off the street. There were neighbors. There were friends. There were church members. There was family. There was, people from his mission or through photography. It didn't matter. Like, he had friends everywhere, and it seemed like he really made an influence or a lasting impression on so many of those people. I recently was listening to a song that was played at my mom's funeral from the play Wicked, and it got me thinking. I'm like, let me say this. I do believe I have been changed for the better. As I think of Garrett, I think most of us could agree with that we have been changed for the better because of him. There was a time when my husband was trying to get into medical school and was trying to take his entrance exam, and it wasn't going quite according to plan. And so we had sent out an email and explained kind of the situation to everybody, and he responded with an email that I have it in my heart all the time, and then I refer to it when I really need it, but I think it's still very, very applicable to today. "Challenges only make us learn and grow. Enjoy the journey. Remember that what you now have you once wished for. Don't get too caught up in the future, and enjoy today, whatever it brings." So I think it's a great lesson that we can all learn, and he took advantage of his time here on earth, and I really do believe that we've been changed for the better because of Garrett.
When I think of Garrett, I think of my favorite definition of a supportive friend. And what I mean by that is, whatever you had in mind, he was in. He may have given you a bit of a hard time or teased you a bit if he thought it was silly, or if something was, maybe outside of your comfort zone, but he was in. And when it came time to do it, he was there. Garrett and I went on a road trip once through southern Utah, then through southern Colorado, and up to Telluride to a photo festival there that we both went to. Side note, I never really was a very good photographer, but I wanted to get into it, and Garrett was there to support. Probably didn't hurt that I was willing to split the cost of gas to do these types of things. On this trip, we went through Moab, and we were there at night, and we were camping, and Garrett had this vision for this photo that he wanted to take, and it was going to be with this boulder in the foreground and then the like night sky kind of moving behind me. So it had to be like a long exposure kind of thing, right? And I'm not a boulderer, so this was like, Garrett was like, okay, you gotta be like this. And I'm like, I can't physically make that climbing move, so tell me an easier one to make, and then I'll do that. And it had me in this position that was like, cool enough. And I would put my hand in this crack, and he would take the photo, and he's like, didn't get it right. Take it again. We probably did this maybe a half dozen times, and I'm like, okay, bro, like, this is my last shot. This is all you got out of me. And I went and put my hand in the crack, only to then watch a scorpion climb out of that very crack, and I was done. Scorpions is where I draw the line. But I am convinced that Gare didn't have a line to support his friends. It was like, hey, Gare, I want to wake up in the middle of the night and go shoot this meteor shower. Why not? Hey, Gare, I want to hike all day and go, ski Lone Peak. And then when we get close up there, we all are like, we got to turn around because like the sun has been beating on us all day. We're all out of water. We have nothing left. And Garrett was like, yeah, whatever. I'm there. When I think of Garrett, I think of how I can be a better friend. How can I support those that I love and always be behind them 100%, even if I think the thing that they're doing or pursuing is a little bit silly? He was and always will be an inspiring dude for me. I love him like crazy, and I miss him every day.
When I think of Garrett, there are 3 stories, 3 interactions I've had with him that always stand out and that always pop into my head. They showcase different aspects of his personality, and they're all very different in their importance. The first one I can think of is when I went to pick up Mackenzie for our second date. I rang the doorbell. The door opens. There's this big, tall, lanky kid there. He looks at me, doesn't say a word, slams the door. And I thought, oh crap, I gotta get this guy to like me. Thought he was gonna be mean, thought he'd be kind of a jerk. He was anything but. He was never anything but kind to me. But his attitude of just, I don't know this guy, I'm just gonna close the door on him. And I'm sure he thought he was being hilarious, but it was pretty intimidating as a new person coming around the house. The second thing I think of with him is more serious and more important and impactful for my life. It was when I was deciding to marry Mackenzie. Garrett and Kenzie were around a lot. They were around each other a lot. They were at the house together a lot. And I thought it was important, very, very important, to sit down and talk to Garrett before asking Kenzie to marry me. I knew he had taken on a mentoring role for her. I know he cared for her and watched out for her. And if there was any one person I needed to talk to and ask his approval, he was the one. And his permission, his seal of approval meant the world to me. There were a lot of people thinking things were going too fast. We needed to slow things down and whatnot. And he was on board, and he was encouraging, and he was just his ever positive self. And we had a great talk sitting in his room. He was just editing some photos, and we were just sitting there talking, and it's a conversation I'll always remember. And it was very important to me and to the family that I started later. And the third thing I always think of when I think of Garrett, it's something that pops into my head often. It was about a month or so before he passed away. I had taken a big important test for myself, and I did not do well, and I was pretty down in the dumps about it. And I got an email from him I don't have the exact words in front of me right now, but the gist of his email was, forget about what happened in the past. Don't worry about the future. Enjoy right now. Enjoy the moment you're living in and embrace it. And then he talked about, in his email, he also said, and it reminded me, I guess I would say, he reminded me that the things that I have right now are things that I once wished for, and to enjoy those things. And it's been a guiding principle in my life. I think about, I would say, multiple times a week from the time I've gotten that email till now, multiple times a week that pops into my head. And it just kind of, ranging from him slamming the door in my face to sending that email, kind of shows the depth and the broadness of his personality, of who he is. He could be a goofball, he could be serious, he could be insightful, he could be deep. And he was just a great guy. And I miss him all the time.
Hello, I'm Landon Owens, one of the many young people that Garrett mentored as a young person. And we grew up in the same ward together. And I probably met him for the first time when I was about 10 years old. And Garrett was the super tall guy with purple hair, a little bit moody, and drove a cool Jeep. And then I learned that he was kind of larger than life and did all these things that I had no idea you could do as a young person. He had a half pipe in his backyard and would bungee jump out of his tree. And I was just kind of wowed that he was doing all those things as a 16 and 17-year-old person. I had no idea you could. He gained my respect when he would come over and make out with my cute babysitter after they thought that they had put us to bed. His older brother did the same thing. I don't know what's wrong with these people. These babysitters are just trying to do a good thing. But Garrett was always super nice when he would come over and hang out with us. And then when I was about 16 years old, Garrett would take me up Little Cottonwood Canyon and teach me how to rock climb. And he was more serious about climbing than I was, so many more levels more serious and intense about it, passionate about it. But he showed me that it was important to him. It was really important to him that I would overcome my fear of heights. And it just makes me smile to think about the way he would say, just, commit to it, just stick it, and I never wanted to let him down. And had some great times climbing with him and fishing with him. And Garrett was such a wonderful person who did things because he truly believed in them and wanted to do them for himself. And he didn't just go with the flow and do things by convention. And I just love that about him. He's such a bold, truly kind and good person. And I miss him a lot. Garrett, if you're listening, we love you and thank you for your exemplary life.
When I think about Garrett, I think about a lot of really good memories. I think of a character. I think of someone who was a little bit larger than life. I think of somebody who I got in arguments with that were very frustrating sometimes because he was unwilling to bend his ways of thinking. I think of a lot of laughter. I think of outdoor adventures and being pushed beyond my limits, for better or worse. At the time, it might have led to some frustration. But ultimately, I was always glad that Garrett sandbagged me enough to make me do something hard. And the sense of accomplishment and adventure that always came with a Garrett-sponsored endeavor. I think of giving him a hug and his gigantic grasshopper legs, meaning that my arm was around his hips and he was just so tall. I think about the sheepish look on his face if you ever poked fun at him or complimented him or tried to do something nice for him, like giving him a birthday gift. He saw it as frivolous, but he would get this sheepish smile on his face that always made me happy. I think of a good friend. I think of somebody in Garrett who wanted the best for the people around him and was pretty proactive in trying to engage you and push you to do things that would be meaningful and memorable. And I think of some really bad mishaps. Whether it be trying to take engagement photos for me and PJ or trying to do the swing in Yosemite, it was always an unexpected adventure when Garrett was along. But I think of a lot of good memories, and I'm super grateful I got to have him as a friend.
When I think of Garrett, I think of a lot of different things. Garrett had some different sides to him, and I think about somebody who could be the most generous person you've ever met. And I also think about somebody who could be a real a-hole. He always had an ability to kind of push you in a way that you didn't really want to be pushed, even though you really wanted to go on the adventure with him. I think about lots of adventures with Garrett. Lots of unfortunate incidents that happened with Garrett too. Like the time he smashed into the wall after the swing and scraped up his whole butt and lower leg. And somehow I was the one who ended up in the bathroom back at camp with him, cleaning out his wounds on his butt. And it was quite the sight. I think about somebody who was always there for you. When I wanted to propose to Sarah, I asked Garrett if he'd take photos because he was going to be on a trip in somewhere out of the country when we were going to get married, and he wanted to do something for us. And so I was going to propose up in Lone Peak in the cirque up there, and we started hiking at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and Garrett was supposed to have a head start on us, but Garrett ended up leaving an hour after us. He parked in the wrong place. He went to the wrong cirque, and somehow he still managed to beat us there and set up 2 cameras. He then took off his undershirt and tied it to the top of a tree to indicate where I should propose because he had mapped out the perfect spot for us. And I remember proposing to Sarah and Garrett popping out from behind the rocks, just cheering, just being so excited for us. And that type of friend doesn't come around often. He was somebody that was always there for you and who really cared. When I think about Garrett, I think about somebody who was very intentional in the way he lived, and he always had purpose behind it. There was always a mission and drive, and he was great. He was really great, and I miss him. And that's what I think about when I think of Garrett.
When I think of Garrett Smith, 2 things come to my mind pretty quickly. Number 1, be a man of your word. Garrett certainly was, and he expected you to be as well. And number 2, live life to the fullest. If you didn't do those 2 things, Garrett would probably still love you, but I don't think he'd understand you. I sure miss him. He's a great influence in my life. Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about Garrett. When I think of Garrett, I think of a man who was wiser than his years and a man who taught me so many things. There was a time in my life where I was really struggling with something, and Garrett knew it, and he saw an opportunity to help me see a different and a better way. And it happened very quickly. He said one thing to me. He said it pretty solidly, and it was just the right thing to change my thinking, change my mental paradigm. And it has affected me for good ever since then. And so I miss Garrett. I miss him so much more than I can even say. Got a picture of him up in our kitchen and a beautiful felted heart right by it, because that's how we feel when we think about Garrett. Such a great individual who continues to influence others, especially me. I know it. I miss you, Garrett. I'll see you on the flip side.
Skinny, scraggly, and mischievous. That is how I first remember Garrett. Even being a little afraid of him with his purple Einstein hair. afraid of the influence he might have on my kids. Thank God he had such an influence on my kids and their parents. We're all so much the better because of Garrett. So many happy, inspiring memories of this godly kid running around in people's skin and crazy clothes. Memories of him hanging with our family and besting up with our son Aaron, and befriending Ben and Michelle despite their being much younger. Aaron and he were quite the pair of extreme adventurers, catching rattlers barehanded in the foothills, bouldering and hanging on the sides of cliffs, traveling across the state in search of hot springs with Bryn Bagley and Nate Stobie. I have memories of his tenacious pursuit of Bryn long before either of them could date, and memories of his tenacious pursuit of becoming a falconer long before most do, and his tenacious pursuit of becoming mission ready and then afterwards Molly worthy. Garrett had an easy smile that seemed nearly as wide as his long feet, and a gentle way about him for someone who was so driven to live by his motto, life by passion. He was always pursuing big dreams, but then he'd actually live them. Like at 18, running a 100-mile race in the Wasatch Mountains, even though he wasn't a runner. Like becoming a talented professional photographer who I loved to hire and work with. Like building a successful art community through creating grand festivals where young artists could commune and sell their wares. Garrett lived life with such a passion that his passing was like an earthquake. Some of us still feel the aftershocks. Garrett still takes my breath away. Like a big wind, he blew into our lives, tousled our hair about, and made us laugh and wonder and delight as he moved us by the strong tug of his heartful being. His presence threw us into the air, and we felt like we had wings.
When I think about Garrett, I think about all the many ways in which he helped shape my life and who I am today. He's directly responsible for a lot of the largest areas of growth I had growing up when I was young. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to him. He was a good friend. He was more of a brother than anything. We went through a lot together, saw a lot, did a lot. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about him. Miss you, Garrett. Love you, Garrett. Hope to see you again.
Let's take 100. I don't cry, promise. Growing up, Garrett was like a second big brother to me. And he taught me a lot of important life lessons. He also inspired and motivated me to follow in his footsteps because he was a trailblazer. He taught himself a skill, photography, and built a business around it, which was super awesome. And way before everybody and their mom was doing photography. He was, without a doubt, one of the greatest people I've ever known. He made massive waves, and the people around him, everyone loved him, and he loved everyone. Anyway, I gotta stop here. I hope you all are doing really good.
I feel like I'm probably not going to be the only one to say this, but when I think of Garrett, I think of an optimist and a visionary. I knew Garrett through a lot of mutual friends and started, hanging out or being around him more often. And where I spent the most amount of time with Garrett was on a handful of shoots where I was skiing a lot at that time, and he was always looking for people to film or take photos of. And he was extremely, if not over optimistic on what could be done, intimidatingly so, where some of the things that he was trying to get us to do on skis was just, I was not comfortable with. It was, and the way he would explain it is it made perfect sense in his mind how we were going to like hit this crazy wall and, transfer onto this transition and it was all going to work out. But he was very visionary in that. So one of the things, one of my favorite photos from that time that I have of me skiing, and it's more special because it was taken by Garrett, was up at the University of Utah one night, late into the night. He had the idea, again, something I would have never thought of, but above the science building in the parking lot, he wanted to build a jump from the parking lot, getting towed in by a truck, to then hit a big jump, gapping over a retaining wall, landing on a banked, downsloped grass landing that had snow on it. And I mean, it was just kind of wild. What made it funnier is that Garrett, with his infectious personality, actually, as we were sitting there trying to like build a runway and build a jump, he got talking to the guy who came to snowplow the parking lot and actually had him pile up snow to make our job easier. And then Garrett, to get the perspective, which he was always wanting to get, like the most unique perspective, set up a tripod on top of his truck and got some amazing photos. And again, that night is, something I'll never forget, and a good example of just how optimistic and visionary he was and passionate about making art and his relationships. And I think of Garrett from time to time. It makes me really happy. He was an awesome person, and I'm glad I got to know him.
When I think of Garrett, I think of the time we saw each other in the MTC. I remember not long after high school, I was in pre-scorum on one Sunday, and the door opened in the middle of the lesson, and in stepped Garrett in street clothes. And he was looking for President Murdoch's office, just totally lost, not knowing where he was or where he was going. And I was excited to see him. I got up, helped him find Kent's office, and I didn't see Garrett until the MTC from then. And I remember I was walking to class one day. I had been there a couple days and a few days, but I just remember approaching the doors, and I just see this silhouette kind of doing a little shimmy coming up to the door, and then the door just busting open, and there's Garrett. And he just yells my name. It's just like, Peter, and comes up and gives me a big hug. And I was just so blown away at how tall Garrett was, because I felt like from the time I saw him at pre-scorum till the MTC, he'd grown a foot. And I just, at that moment, felt like the lost dog, and Garrett helping me and giving me a hug. And it really just gave me the confidence and inspiration I needed at the time to kind of get over those first few days blues of the MTC. And I'll just always remember Garrett just busting open the doors and yelling my name. And we're just so excited to see each other. And that memory will always be in my mind. Love you, Garrett.
Hi, my name is Bryn, and Garrett and I were a lot of things. We were best friends and partners through one of the more formative times in either of our lives. So when I try and finish that sentence of when I think of Garrett, a lot of things come, and I think of him all the time. So today I wanted to share a little bit about one part of him that maybe is less remembered. I know that anyone that's interacted with him in any degree comes away with the idea of life by passion and intensity and push, 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 and don't give up and don't settle, all those things, which very much were a part of who he was. And I think he would just be floored to know how many people still are impacted by how he lived his life that way and by those ideas. But I want to share something that I think would make him roll his eyes, which is his sweetness. Garrett was a very sweet, romantic little soul. And I know that little and Garrett do not go together, except for that even from the time he was very small, he was just like this hopeless romantic. Our relationship began when I was 8, and he, wrote letters to me and had his friends deliver them to me at recess. But then that turned into him building a mailbox and attaching it to our back fence that said Garrett and Bryn only. And he would just like put surprises in there every day, and notes and flowers and live animals, sometimes things he stole. But he just had in him this like love and like sweetness that, yeah, again, I think he would hate that I was saying this, but I think that's why I have to say it, because I just feel like that's important to remember. That's part of who he is. His eyes are just so full of this sweetness alongside the intensity. And so I want to remember him for that. Another thing is his love of quotes. We shared this, fascination with other people's words, and both had notebooks of all these quotes that we loved, and in letters that we'd write to each other, there was always quotes. And so I wanted to share one quote that he wrote in a letter to me that first you can see his little tiny handwriting. But I think that this quote sums up his life so well, and I hope that he feels so pleased with how he did live his life, because it is all of this. So let me read this. This is what he had to say. A quality life is one that positively influences others and makes the world around it a better place in which to live. A quality life is one that is constantly growing, expanding its horizons and enlarging its borders. A quality life is one that is filled with love and loyalty, patience and perseverance, kindness and compassion. A quality life is one that is based on eternal potential and not confined to this life alone. A quality life is a life well lived. And I think all of us are so grateful for his life well lived, and so sad at not being able to have him with us anymore. But we'll focus on the gratitude for now. And we love you, Garrett.
I think about Garrett every time I climb, and especially when I'm taking my kids climbing these days. I am not a fantastic climber by any means, but it's something that makes me really happy to do, and it's an activity that I feel like is part of my life because I knew Garrett, and it's something that every time I get to participate in, I can hear his voice in my head giving me reminders and pointers, and it just always makes me feel really grateful that I got to call him friend.
When I think of Garrett, I think of intensity. Whether that's the intensity of working 12, 15-hour days doing yard work with him each summer, or the intensity of him coming with me to make sure I bought my climbing shoes 2 sizes too small so that I could climb better and really feel the rock. I think of the intensity of hearing the news. I was towards the end of my mission, and my mission president had called me and told me the news of Garrett's accident, and I don't remember a time before or since that I have cried more, and that whole morning, throughout that, the loss that he was and the great memories that I had of him. I think back to the last memory I have of him was 2 years before that, before my mission. He took me up to Lone Peak, camped out the night before, and climbed the face, and he talked through some of the things of his mission, some of the things he thought were dumb, some of the things he thought were amazing, and the lessons he'd learned. And one of his lessons I guess he thought I needed was he had the parable of two archers, the one that looked out over the valley and was like, if you had to cross this valley and you could only walk to where your arrow is and then go again, how quickly could you cross it? And he talked about the two archers. One would pull his arrow back just within control and aim and make it every time right where he aimed, and the other one would pull it back twice as far, twice as hard, but his arms would be shaking and he would shoot all over the place, but made it twice as far. And I think he knew that I needed his example of that intensity of going a little bit harder, pushing a little bit further. And because I was gone, I was out in Australia, I have been able to listen to the funeral once I got back, and it's been a kind of a yearly tradition now to come up to the mountains each year about this time and re-listen to the funeral. Now 10 years, I guess that's about 20 hours of funeral that I've listened through, and it's become a very sacred part of my year to think through and think back of the memories of Garrett, think back on my last year, and if I'm living up to the ideals, living up to the love for life, the passion for life that he is a symbol for and as a great reminder. So I love you, Garrett, and thank you for the inspiration.
I'm standing here in our front room in front of this wonderful picture of Jerusalem that hangs to remind us of Garrett almost every day as we look at it. I also think of Garrett every day as I walk into the house on the rock path that he created. And it's a bit of a bumpy path, but it makes us smile and helps us remember his handiwork, his vision. I think of Garrett when we're at the farmhouse and I look at the remodels that we have loved and think of all the work he put in to help dig out the basement. I think of Garrett as I watch my grandchildren climb and think of how influential he was in teaching my children to love and be good climbers and safe climbers. And not only that, but to share their love of climbing with others. And now we have our grandchildren sharing their love of climbing with their friends as they come to visit us in Idaho. I think of Garrett often when I'm in Idaho. There are so many places he loved up at the ranch, and there are things that he worked on, and we think of him. I think of Garrett when I look at our buffalo and think of what stoic animals they are, and I think of they just embody in lots of ways what I have as fond memories of Garrett. His life was so abbreviated, and we all still feel the loss, but we also are so grateful for the way that he continues to help us and to inspire us, even though he is not with us physically. And he continues to be a huge influence on all of the Bagleys, and we are grateful. And even the grandchildren who didn't know him will feel his influence because of the way that their parents' lives were influenced by Garrett, and then the things they learned from Garrett are being passed on. We send our love to all the Smith family and friends of Garrett who watch this, and just know that we are so grateful for his influence in our life and his continued spirit of adventure, spirit of challenge, of excellence, of beauty and art, and of having great projects that you endeavor to work on and finish up. So love to all. Thanks to Garrett for his continued inspiration in our lives.
Hi, my name's JR, and Garrett's my cousin. You know, growing up, Garrett was one of my absolute best friends, and if there's one thing that comes to mind when I think about Garrett, it has to be adventure. No matter what we were doing, if we were going to the farm for Christmas Eve, if we were going to Lagoon for Memorial Day, if he was coming to our ranch, if I was going to his house, no matter what, it was always just such a fun and adventurous time. You know, I was kind of a wuss growing up. Ask anyone in my family, they'll be able to tell you that. Especially when it came to heights, I was just scared of a lot of things growing up, and Garrett just wasn't having it. Every single time that Garrett and I got together, he was always finding ways to push my boundaries further and further. And at the time, I really hated it a lot of the time. It was just scary, you know, but reflecting back on it and thinking about it now, after Garrett would leave, I would continue to push those boundaries. And each time we came back together, I would do new things. And it was that really showed me, you know, thinking back on it now, that on the other side of fear lies freedom. You know, we can't let our fears get in front of our potential. And Garrett never did that. You know, everything that Garrett did, he gave 110%. You know, be it his mountain climbing, all the animals he collected from the petting zoo up to the falcon, you know, photography. Garrett has such a beautiful eye, and looking at the world through his lens just makes it such a bigger place. And I think that's what I love the most about Garrett, is whenever you're around him, you just felt big. You felt great. He had this way of lifting you up and making you believe in yourself unlike anyone I've ever met before. And, you know, it's just that passion that he has, you know, to give it 110%. And I was thinking about a story of when we were really young. Deb took me and him up to my grandma Grove's to spend the night, and a couple days actually. And on the way up there, he was talking about how he wanted to go swing on the rope that was over the hayloft in our grandpa's barn. And right off the bat, Debbie's like, "No, you're not going to do that." And so as soon as we get there, when Debbie's carrying stuff in, Garrett pulls me aside and we try to sneak over to swing on the rope swing. And within seconds, Debbie knew what was up, because you couldn't get anything past Debbie, right? And so a couple days go by, and Garrett has mapped out this course of action that we were going to take. We were going to go to the back of the pasture, and we, you know, army crawled through the ditches, and we did some ninja moves over the fences, and finally we got to the barn, and he was so excited to finally get there. And we opened the door, and there's Debbie standing under the rope swing just waiting for us. Because like I said, you couldn't get anything past Deb. And Garrett was so frustrated. I remember he just wanted to be able to swing on that rope so bad, and the fact that he couldn't just killed him. And it was that kind of passion that carried him through life that has honestly made him one of the biggest inspirations that I have in mind. You know, a couple years ago, I was working in software development and decided I wanted to follow my passion that I was afraid to do, and that's go to film school. And the first thing that I did when I made that decision is I went and found a picture of Hammers Inc. logo, and I made it the wallpaper on my laptop. And then I went and printed off Life by Passion, because it's a constant reminder to me that, you know, no matter what it is that you want to do, if you just give it your all and you put your life into it, you can do great things, just like Garrett did every single day. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the man, the husband, the father that I am today. And I am just so grateful for the time I was able to spend with him and his family. And I just love you guys. Thanks.
My first experience with Garrett is when he got involved in the birds, and how he went with us on one of our trips, and he done nothing but make lanyards and things to hold birds. And we kind of followed him along that way for a few years, and he was just a very active boy. It was fun to be around him.
Oh,
Have a memory of Garrett?
Garrett. How could you ever forget Garrett with that personality? And he loved people too. He was a very talented boy, and we sure miss him.
Okay.
I love him.
I have some great memories of Garrett Smith. We had, from when he was a young man, he came up and stayed overnight with us a couple of times, and we explained to him about the cow business and that kind of stuff. And then we met with him. Of course, the most important thing that I have involved with Garrett is when I sealed him at the temple, him and Molly. That's the most important thing that my memory is with Garrett. And he loved it. He loved being involved with the family. We had a good, one of Molly's friends was the ex-president of the Boston Temple. He was the first president of the Boston Temple and he was there, and he commented on how good it was to be with the family and Garrett. But Garrett and I had some good memories together. With Debbie, of course. Debbie was always so fond of him when he went on his mission, and she kept track of the days that he was gone during his mission, and we kind of kept up with her on that. And he sent us a nice Dutch thing from Holland, and it's up to the farm, so it's in the pantry closet there, not closet, but cupboard. That's the blue and white one of that special pottery from, but we have some very fond memories of Garrett, and especially after he was sealed in the temple. He was super friendly. He come up and went through the temple with us a couple of times, and we had some very fond memories of Garrett and Molly. Just too bad that mishap happened and took his life. I pray for him still every day, by name, and as I do with all of our grandchildren. So I don't want any of you to think you're left out, because I use your name and whose child you are, and we go through each family. Debbie's, Mark's, Shauna, Garth, and Heather. Each one of them with each one of their children. So
I'm grateful for this opportunity to share a memory that I have of Garrett, and just remember him being so tiny when he was born, and not very big little person, but he certainly grew up tall and handsome. One of my memories that I think of quite often is, I think it was Matt and Mackenzie's wedding, and we were at the Salt Lake Temple, and I remember walking in to the marriage waiting room, and Garrett was sitting in there by himself. Nobody had gotten there yet, and he was stunning in his white temple clothes. I told him he looked just like Jesus. He had his long, beautiful hair and that big, beautiful smile. And I really think that he was a wonderful example of being close to the Savior. And I love that memory. I know his hair was long because he was waiting for Molly to come home from her mission, and then he was going to cut it. But anyway, we love and miss him, and are so grateful of the many memories that we have of him. And we know he loved the outdoors and was always there. And we love and miss him.
When I think about Garrett, I think about him working in my parents' backyard, and I think about the outdoors and enjoying nature.
When I think of Garrett, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is why. Because all these years later, I still don't quite understand why Garrett had to leave this earth life. But the thoughts that follow immediately after are just words. I guess the biggest word is passion. Live by passion, right? I think that Garrett was a huge influential individual for many, many people. I grew up in the neighborhood with Garrett. Although he was a few years older, I feel like everyone my age and in between us looked up to him. I think of all all the guys that were my age, and I know that they were buddies with him and followed his footsteps. He was such an incredible human being with a big heart. I feel as though Garrett would reach for branches on trees that little 5'2" individuals like me would never dream of reaching. And I mean that literally, and I mean that figuratively. I feel like there was no boundaries for him, and he was just someone who would do it. If he wanted to do it, he would do it. And it was something that I personally admired in him. Obviously, Mackenzie, I have to share this story of when I first moved to this country and to my new family. And Garrett was so nice. He took your Barbie and gave it to me. And it was just a small gesture that a 12-year-old boy could make to help me feel welcome and be a friend. And I'm so grateful for that. I think of him and my brother George playing with their rats. I tried it once. I once tried to hold a rat in my shirt and like walk around. I don't know how they did it. Those little nails, and they just didn't care. They were just boys. Although I was not a part of this memory, but I've heard the story of George and of Garrett walking down the street with their trumpets or trombones. I don't know which ones, just playing music together. Yeah, he was just such a good person. And I know that anybody watching this obviously is in agreement with that. So I am grateful for the kindness that he shared to everyone around him. And still, all these years later, he's somebody that comes to my mind often, and I think of when I think of people who have inspired me in my life. So I'm grateful for that example of his.
When I think about Garrett, I get hyped, and I remember all the good times that we had. I get super pumped to get outside and try to do the things that we always used to do growing up. Or Garrett's just inspired me to always do the best that I can do. Gary, you're always a dreamer and a doer, and I always appreciated how you just went for it, and you didn't let anything hold you back from chasing your dreams. I loved your outlook on life, and your outlook to do you and be authentic and be you as an individual, and then to bring that out in all of us. I looked up to you a ton, and I appreciate all the good times we had growing up on your half pipe, the climbing, and the canyoneering trips that we had. I remember when we were canyoneering down in Morning Glory Arch, and at the time I was pretty scared of heights, and we were doing a simultaneous rap, and I was having a tough time. I was like, Gary, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. He's just like, John, we just gotta go. We just gotta send it. So it's like, no. It's just like, you gotta go, and just sent it, and everything was good. And that's how you pushed us. You pushed us to just send it in life, and to live to our fullest. I always remember driving past your house, and you'd always be up, and I could see your light on, and I could see that you're reading about falconry, you're reading about climbing, you're reading about photography, you're reading your scriptures. I really treasure the time that you took to read the scriptures with me and help me understand and help me on my journey of faith. Both faith and just like my abilities, whether that was climbing or spiritually. You really helped me grow as a person. And I will always treasure those experiences and treasure the fun times that you brought to our lives and that you bring to our lives. I'm so excited to see you, and thanks for building me up each and every day. Love you, Gare, and till we meet again.
Well, one of the best memories I have of Garrett, all of them with him were great, but one that actually Linda reminded me of this one, but and it is one of my favorites. Seems like when we would go spend time together, he would, when he was younger, obviously, when he'd get on my shoulders and he would play with my ears like crazy. He would just twist, and he wouldn't let go of my ears. He would just play and play and play with my ears, and everybody got a kick out of that, and I loved it too, and what a good memory that was. But always good memories of Garrett, and what a good guy he was, and very independent, but we loved him for that, and he was his own guy, and we know that he was close to Heavenly Father there at the end, and what a special guy he was. Love you, Garrett.
So I have a lot of memories of Garrett. One particular one popped into my mind, but obviously like Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, all those with the cousins were wonderful memories for me. But there was one time when we were back behind our house going to the river, and we thought we'd climb like this big hill. It was like a dirt hill pretty much, and me and Alex, I think we tried to do it first, and you know, Garrett was pretty little. He was tiny and we were pretty young, so I'm not sure if I have all the memories correct, but I remember him climbing up, and he got a little, maybe halfway up, and he was so scared. And he was crying, and he wouldn't move, and we kept trying to help him, and we couldn't get him down. And I think from what I remember is, I think Alex went running back to get help, and I tried to climb up and just hold him in place so he wouldn't fall or be scared. And I remember my arms were shaking and trying to hold him, and I wasn't sure if I could help him that much, but I think after a little bit he got brave and took a breath, and we got him back up. And that's kind of ironic for how he turned out to be such an adventurer and climbing and all that stuff, so that's kind of funny. But I remember that, and I remember being really scared and for him and wanting to help him and save him, and so that's a good memory. Also, another good memory I have is he loved the pet store by his house, and we would always walk down there to go see the pets. And I remember he had a ferret and I always thought it was so gross because he would let it climb like up his shirt, and it was just this long furry thing, but I remember he loved it. And I was young, maybe I'm wrong, I think it was Garrett that happened to, but we sure miss him a lot, and his beautiful smile and his beautiful spirit, and I know he's watching over all of us, and I can't wait to meet him again, see him. So, love you, Garrett.
What up, Hammers Inc. fam? When I think about Garrett, I think about giving. I just found Garrett's business card in my office the other day, and I've been dwelling on this for a little bit. And giving yourself to the moment, giving yourself to the art, giving yourself to those you love, giving yourself to the world, those around you, to wherever you're at. Garrett gave me my first camera, Nikon D80. It's a little extended battery pack. I could send you to some deep mountain places. He just gave it to me. That was not just about the camera. That was about him giving himself as a mentor to me at a time when I needed it most, which then allowed me to give myself to the path that I was beginning on. And 10 years later, I'm using a camera. I wish I held on to that one. But I'm still using a camera to help support my family and my new little girl that just joined us a little bit ago. And, you know, I think about that a lot now, that you got to give yourself to anyone you can, anyone that needs it, especially where we have abilities and talents to help others pursue theirs. And yeah, my life would be completely different without Garrett having given me a camera and therefore giving me an opportunity to express myself and to figure out what my calling was. And in turn, I try to send it every damn day, brother. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm filming or hanging out with my baby girl or skiing, going to dinner with friends, I'm trying to honor what you taught me and give myself to the moment. So thanks, man. These 10 years haven't been the same without you, but they've been a hell of a ride. And right now, more than ever, we need to harness the power of the lesson and the love that you taught us, man, to give ourselves to the new phase after a little bit of darkness around here. So let's send it. Let's go. Hammers Inc. fam. Garrett, I love you, dog.
Hi, I'm making a video for Garrett. There's so many things that I remember and just cherish. One of the things I was thinking about is when he came to stay with me and worked at the ranch. He was so helpful. He always wanted to be there and help out with anything he could. The one thing that impressed me is that he was so smart that when we were breeding the horses, he had to find out why and a lot of other things, which he got a book, or I'm not sure how he got the information, and could tell me why and when, what we were doing. And it was impressing because it's a lot of work, and he always tried to help me and my family. I love him so much. Miss him more. Love you.
When I think of Garrett, I think of riding in the back seat of the car next to him, and anytime we were approaching railroad tracks, he would scramble to find an uncovered piece of hardware like a screw or something, and he would have to put his 12-inch long finger on that screw. And he told us all that if somebody didn't put their finger on the screw, then the car was going to fall apart when we went over the railroad tracks. And that's something that has stayed with me into adulthood. There are many times when I'm going over railroad tracks and I wonder if there wasn't some truth to that. When I think of Garrett, I think of his entrepreneurial spirit, even as a young kid, when he put together a petting zoo in his backyard behind his parents' garage and had all the kids in the neighborhood come over and see his assortment of ferrets and bunnies and whatever else he had there. When I think of Garrett, I also think of the bright blue crayon mark on the mortar between the bricks on my parents' garage walking up to their front door. It stands as a memorial to him and as a reminder of him, and I always considered him my bonus brother, and I was always so glad to have his protection on the school bus and his teasing, and I'm just so glad that I got to know such a remarkable person. Miss you, Gare.
Hi everyone who loves Garrett. This is Denise Walker. I live down the street from his former home on Oakwood, and my memory is one of him when he was a baby. And one day I was home and I heard some water running and followed the sound. And I don't know why I can't switch this around, so I'm going to do this. I followed the sound out front. And he was right down here, turning on the hose, wearing nothing but his diaper and in bare feet. So, cutest little Garrett, sweetest boy, always was, always will be. And then another day, according to my kids, and I don't remember this, he drew on our brick with crayon. And I've decided it's always going to stay there. So those are my memories of Garrett as a sweet boy, and I know you all miss him, and I miss him. I wasn't as close to him when he got a little bit older, but oh, by the way, yeah, I was going to show you how far up the street he lived. When he walked down here, I guess he was maybe like 18 months old. And he lived all the way up at the top of the street there and came down to visit me in his diaper. It was so cute. So I'm in bare feet in honor of Garrett. Although, let's face it, I'm always in bare feet. So anyway, that's my memory. Sending love to the Smith family and all of those who love and miss Garrett.
So everybody knows how incredible Garrett is. But one memory is, I think it was like 2008, 7 or 9, I don't remember, but it snowed a ton. And we went out at like 3 a.m. to the University of Utah campus, and we were going to hit this rail or something, and it didn't work out. And we were driving, and we found like this parking lot. And then there was a cement wall and then a hill next to it, and we're like, let's build a jump in the parking lot with a big gap and then we gap over the wall and land down the hill. And so we got someone who was snow plowing the parking lot to build the jump, like plow snow, and then we shaped it, and we had to be towed in by this sketchy car pull so we get enough speed. And Garrett came to take pictures, and he was just so passionate about it. I remember to set up the lighting, he was like shimmying up these poles in the parking lot and like strapping his photography lights to it. And then he got on top of his truck, like the shell, and he set up his camera, and so it was like a view. And the pictures they turned out, they're just incredible. But I just remember after, Garrett was like, "You guys are just incredible athletes." And I'm like, "Athlete? Like I've never thought that I'm an athlete before." But it's just like the way that he talked and the way that he was and how he was so passionate and how he made everyone feel. I also, Garrett and I worked closely together at church, and he was always just about like, "Guys, why are we meeting? Let's just get out and like visit people and meet people and talk to people. Like, this is pointless." And he was just like always pushing for that. He just had so much perspective on life, like very early. I remember him sitting me down and like being like, "Scott, you don't have to be a cookie cutter person. Like a lot of people in Utah are, like, be different and don't try to conform." And it's something I think about. It's something I think about a lot. Actually, like 3-4 years ago, like I was like going through like a tough time, and I had a dream, and Garrett was there, and he didn't say anything to me, like no words. He kind of just walked by me, and like the vibe, he just gave off a powerful vibe of like, just relax, and like life is about the journey, and don't worry so much. Like the pain or like what you're going through isn't, like, in the long run, it's not that big of a deal. So just go with it and learn. And whether that was like my mind putting Garrett in there because he was that type of person, or whether it was like an actual, spiritual event or something, I don't know, but it doesn't matter to me because Garrett's like the perfect person to deliver that message, because I think he had that perspective. But anyway, this turned out longer than I wanted it to, but I love Garrett, yeah, I'm just so grateful that I got to know him.
Hi. Okay, when I think of Garrett, I think about trying to keep up with him. So I feel like we did a lot of adventures together where I was always behind him and I could not keep up with him. Just his energy and his excitement for life always took us really fun places. And I also think about him behind the camera and how much it inspired him to take pictures and how much he loved doing that, just capturing either nature, moments outside, or pictures of friends like climbing or skiing. And I think that's such an amazing thing that we have of his that he left behind. So that's just one little thing that I think of when I think of him. There's a lot of other things too, but that's something that brings a smile to my face.
Hey everybody, my name's Tom Adams. I was a friend of Garrett and a co-workers at a number of different places, and I think this is awesome, so thanks everybody for doing this. One of my favorite memories of Garrett is on a climbing trip in October with my now wife Gwendolyn, and we went down to the cathedral in between St. George and Mesquite. Had an awesome time. I had to encourage Garrett to get out and come climb at a crag that he might not normally go to, which was really fun. And he was dead set on us going down during conference and attending conference while we were down there. And if anybody knows me, getting me to church when I'm on vacation is a pretty hard task. But Garrett, of course, as you know him, very excited, very motivating, and we ended up going to this meeting. But we had lots of excuses to not go. One of them, right when we were leaving, he was supposed to be guiding me as I backed up in this very tight spot with my Tacoma truck. And he, of course, was having a great time talking with my wife, Gwendolyn. I'm backing up pretty much by myself, and I hit what I think is a rock, and I pushed the gas a little harder, and explosion. My rear view, or my rear shell door, glass door explodes as I hit a branch that I couldn't see. So that was one more excuse that didn't make me want to go. We still got in the car, we started driving. As we crest over the hill, the summit, just out by the cathedral and the back road by near St. George to go to Beaver Dam, Garrett sees a golden eagle in the snow. And in a panic, he says, "Turn around, we have to go catch it." And of course, I don't know who in the world tries to catch eagles, or any bird for that matter, with their bare hands. But Garrett is explaining to me as he turns around that it's stuck in the snow and he can catch it easy because they can't take off. Well, needless to say, and lucky for the eagle, when we turned back around and got there, it was already gone. So we still make our way to the church house. And before we get there, we go in, and Garrett's leading out, and I said, "Well, I can't go in there like this." He's like, "What do you mean you can't go in like this? I got to clean up. I went to private Catholic school. This is not in my DNA to go into church not dressed up." And so I take the quickest shower I can in a parking lot, get a shirt on and a tie, and of course Garrett's probably in chacos and dirty climbing pants and a fleece jacket of sorts, and borderline we looked homeless before I changed. But we get into the meeting house, and we arrive late. And we get there just in time for a talk from Gordon B. Hinckley. And he's discussing this talk about a dream that someone had. And in the dream, this person was in a race to get somewhere, just as we were in a race to get there. And this person also felt they had to clean up to be presentable. And that was exactly who I was that day. And in his dream, he gets cleaned up, and he shows up, and the person who I believe in the dream was Joseph Smith, said, "You're late." And the response from the person that cleaned up was, "But I'm clean, I'm clean." And I couldn't help but nudge Garrett, and we just laughed and laughed about us being basically in the same scenario that story was that was being explained. And really, it goes to show how much fun Garrett is, how contagious his enthusiasm and his excitement was for life, and doing the things that really meant a lot to him. And at that time, it was getting to that meeting and going climbing, which I appreciated. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that story. Hopefully Garrett still thinks about that story, because it's one of my favorites, times we had together. And thanks everybody for doing this, and take care. Bye.
I can't believe it's already been 10 years since Garrett left us. Time just flies. But when I think about Garrett, I often think about what the last 10 years would have been like had he been here. And it would have been full of a lot of adventures. I would have been a lot better at all of my hobbies, especially climbing and outdoor adventure stuff. Because that was one thing about Garrett. Not only did he strive to be the absolute best at everything he did and push himself, he was very, very good at helping others reach their potential and becoming the best they could. I was a far better climber and outdoor adventurer because Garrett pushed me harder than I would have ever pushed myself to reach my potential. So far better at those things, and also a far better human, just from knowing Garrett. When I think about Garrett, a lot of the thoughts that come to my head or things I'd use to describe him would be fearless. Garrett was absolutely fearless. And this one seems a little cliche because we talk about it a lot with him, but passion, obviously he lived very passionately, and friendship. Garrett was just a true friend, and he'd do anything for anyone. His fearless aspect, like nothing stood in his way. He would push the limits in every way, and in only 1 to 3 minutes, I don't have near enough time to tell all the stories I know about Garrett and how fearless he was, but I think one story that really stood out to me was we were backpacking at night into the Wind River Range. We had a small group, and we get there, it's pitch black. There are a lot of grizzly bears in the Wind River Range, which I'm terrified of. And Garrett put in his headphones and his headlight and just took off, just into the dark, followed the trail, just had not a care in the world that there were grizzly bears around, and just fearless. I stuck back with the group because I'm terrified of them. But Garrett was just absolutely fearless, and there's countless stories that show that. Passion, just everything he did was full bore, full of passion, full of life. He didn't do anything halfway. He either did it or he didn't. Like I said, he pushed others to reach their potential as well. And then just a true friend. Garrett was always there for you if you ever needed him. He was always there for me. My life is better in so many ways from knowing Garrett, and I miss him dearly. He was just a true friend and a great human being. The last 10 years would have been great with him, but I'm sure whatever it is you do on the other side, that he's crushing it. Love you, Garrett.
you.